Well, if you liked Michigan State at over 5.5 wins, you are going to absolutely love their new total. But is it a surefire bet? And we're going to talk about that in the first segment. And then segments 2 and 3, we are joined by Alex Kirshner. He's part of the Split Zone Duo, talking all things Michigan State football. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube how you are feeling about 4.5 wins for Michigan State football. Are you betting just some money on it, or are you betting all of your money on it? We're going to spend all first segment talking about that. And then, of course, segments 2 and 3, part of the Split Zone Duo podcast, one of the best college football podcasts out there. Alex Kirshner joins to talk all things Michigan State football offseason. And plus, can Aidan Chiles be the best quarterback in the Big Ten? Let's get into the show here. Guys, this offseason started with Michigan State's win total, 5.5. Now, for those that don't know betting, you're essentially guessing, are they going to win more than 5.5 games? More or less than. That's a pretty low total, but coming off of back-to-back bowl gameless seasons, year one under Jonathan Smith, a little rebuild going on, fine. All right, fine. I get it. Like that's a low but fair number. And then this week on FanDuel, gets even lower. 4.5. I've been feeling okay about the offseason. I know a lot of you out there have been feeling okay about the offseason. Heck, some of you feel great about the offseason and all the additions that Michigan State has made. But that number has gotten lower. So we've been talking all offseason so far that, hey, over 5.5 is a number I feel comfortable with. Yes, there are some pitfalls despite the easy schedule. It's very thin in depth in some key places. But, hey, if you can get through with some, injury luck, yeah, I think 5.5 is a good bet. Now, how about 4.5, guys? All right. So I asked this question on Twitter not too long ago because after this news, I wrote MSU's win total has dropped to 4.5, open at 5.5. Folks, let's make financial decisions. How are we feeling? I said hammer the over, light bet on the over, light bet on the under, and hammer the under. Now, just to get this out of the way, I fully understand that most of my followers are Michigan State fans. I think we got a lot of Spartan supporters that are voting on this. Hammer the over, overwhelming favorite with 800 votes in right now, 73%. Light bet on the over at 20.8%. So that is roughly 94% of the votes going for the over. And then light bet on the under just 1.9% and hammer the under 4.1%. So it's either Vegas is going to take all of our money, as they usually do. You often don't want to be on the public side, but man, doesn't that kind of seem like a number that we should be in on? Now, let's just go through the reasons why the under can hit. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Where do you win football games? More times than not, as we've learned the last few years, the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. Michigan State just lost 2 key contributors on the defensive line. Yes, they've tried to supplement it with some transfer portal moves, but point blank period, that's a strength that has been taken away. On the other side, the offensive line, I feel fine about the starters right now. I'm not going to say they're world beating or they're going to win the Joe Moore Award, but hey, you know what? I think that's a fine starting group. If any of them get hurt though, okay, the depth is a little dicey and inexperienced there. But guys, other than that, we talked about the schedule. September, November, looking great. October, yeah, that's going to be hard. But let's take a look at all the other win totals for the other 10 Power 4 teams Michigan State will play this year. Very top heavy, right, guys? Ohio State and Oregon, both 10.5. Michigan State's not going to be winning those games. I'm sorry to rain on all your parades. Michigan, 9.5. They are expecting a good year from the Wolverines, of course, reigning national champs. And then the rest, the other 7 Power 4 teams you play. Iowa, they have at 7.5. Maryland, 7 games. Rutgers, 6.5. Illinois, 5.5. Indiana, 5.5. Purdue and Boston College, both with Michigan State at 4.5. That's an average of 7.1 expected wins per Vegas. And I know Vegas isn't the end-all be-all, but hey, they do a pretty good job over there in the desert. So guys, that is 7 games against teams with 7.5 win totals or lower. That's not even including Florida Atlantic. That's not even including Prairie View A&M, which you should beat by about 800 points. So here we are. We got some coin toss games, 7 coin toss games, I would call them. Iowa is also a home game. Rutgers, also a home game. Both of those teams are sitting at 6.5 or higher. Maryland is early in the season too, guys. That's another team that has 7 as their expected win total. And I say early in the season to emphasize that because I can see injuries being an issue here late in the season, and maybe that's where Michigan State starts to lose their footing and starts to flirt with going under 4.5. As if, God forbid, Aidan Chiles gets hurt, okay? The drop-off from him to Tommy Schuster, no disrespect, I think it's going to be pretty sizable. And then, of course, all the other positions that take place in the football field. But you're essentially betting on there being some key injuries if you are betting the under, in my opinion here, because in these 7 games against teams with just 7.5 or lower, I mean, can you win 3 of them? Because you hope that you can chalk up Florida Atlantic as an automatic win. Prairie View A&M should be an automatic win. That would be devastating if you lose that one. But man, guys, I don't know. I am still feeling pretty good about the over here. This is 10 Power 4 games. Can you find 5 wins? I mean, are we going to celebrate a 5-7 season? No, absolutely not. But I mean, look, this means that the bar is kind of on the floor here and not hitting the over. And I know that we're going to talk next segment with Alex Kirshner. How low the expectations are for year one. Just show competency, just show that you can develop, just show that you can run a game, play the other guys a little closer like the Ohio States and the Oregon, and then we'll all be happy. But even with that said, if it is under 4.5 wins, I think that is actually sign for maybe some disappointment. Now, I'm not going to make this grand sweeping statement that, okay, that means that the Jonathan Smith era is not going to work out at all if he just goes 4-8 in year one. But man, that especially if everyone stays healthy the entire year, that would be a letdown if you can't just sneak out 5 wins against that schedule that we are talking about. So, guys, just for context, like I said, the average for win totals for your Power 4 teams this year is 7.1. Last year, the preseason average for your schedule was 7.45. Now, does that mean a lot? Maybe. I don't know. But that's to say that it was a harder schedule for Michigan State going into the season last year. And let's take a look at the teams that had a win total of 7.5 or lower last year. Because I think this also paints how close you can be to climbing over that win total this year. Iowa, okay, they had a 7.5 over under. You very well could have won that game. I mean, God forbid you have somewhat of an offense and you guys know how to cover a punt. But, I mean, that is a game that was right within their grasp. Maryland, horrendous start. The Terrapins scored on their first 3 drives of the game. And, of course, Michigan State's offense did absolutely nothing. But that's a game that, with enough beers in your system, you could talk yourself into, Michigan State should have won that game. Minnesota, perhaps that's the game that got out of reach for them late in the fourth quarter. But, again, guys, the theme with this is competent offense. And Michigan State had one of the worst offenses in the country last year. So hopefully you just inject just an average season out of the offense this year. You're still getting wins against these teams. Indiana, of course, you won. Nebraska, you won. And then Rutgers. I hope that this staff and these players can protect the 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. I'm not doing that all to do moral win radio from last season, but I think Michigan State was a lot closer to those games, and all that was missing between a win or a loss. Competent coaching and something called an offensive game plan and execution, something that Michigan State might try to mix in this year. So I don't mean to come to you as a slappy, say always hit the over for Michigan State. That's not really what we do here on the show. We are pretty critical of our Spartans, but man, 4.5 with this schedule, guys, like that. I mean, if not for financial gain, that just has to be the over just to make us all feel better about where this thing is going to go moving forward. All right, we're going to end this first segment on some recruiting news. We missed this yesterday. Emmett Bork, 6'6", 240-pound tight end out of Wisconsin. He commits to Michigan State as the 4th commit of the class and the 2nd offensive commit for the 2025 class. Leo Hannon, the quarterback out in California, being the other offensive commit. He told Spartans Illustrated, quote, "I'm a big physical player that will go up and get the ball over defenders and catch in traffic. I'm a player that will out-physical defenders in space after the catch, and also a guy that isn't afraid to hit people and block down low." Now, 6'6" going into his senior season, that's a frame that you can appreciate, that you can grow into a fine player here. And he does have a wide receiver background, so this seems to be more of the pass-catching tight end option. Now, Michigan State, all things considered, I think they will try to add another tight end this cycle. There's 2 that are going to be visiting in June. Jaden Savory out of St. Mary's, Charles White also St. Mary's. He's already part of the class. And then Tyler Kielmeyer from Ohio. He will be visiting that first weekend in June too. So keep your eye on that. And then, yes, of course, Emmett Bork, which by the way, like incredible name. Like that is a tight end name that we could all get behind. Welcome to East Lansing. All right, guys, we're going to be joined by Alex Kirshner here in a hot second. Need to talk your ears off about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or it's your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge win. So what are you waiting for out there? Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Folks, super fired up for this one. This is one of the best all-around college football podcasts in the world. It is part of the Split Zone Duo. We are talking with Alex Kirshner. Alex, how we doing, man? We enjoying the offseason so far, or does it not really even seem like an offseason this day and age in football?
Matt, thanks for having me. Great to be here. I am enjoying the offseason, and it doesn't feel like an offseason. So both of those things are true at the same time.
It is a double-edged sword with us content makers, because a few years ago, hey, like in April and May, we were dying for anything to talk about. Like those were the dog days of the offseason. And now, well, yeah, there's plenty to talk about with the transfer portal, everything like that. So much so it's almost making us dizzy, but I guess we'll take it. I guess.
Hey, we'll take it. Yeah. College football might be in big trouble, but at least we can have good things to talk about and write about while it goes down the drain.
Yeah. We're part of the band that is still playing as the Titanic is going down, but you know what? I hope we're playing great music for everyone here. I want to rewind the clock here, Alex, to the start of the offseason, because obviously, Locked On Spartans, we talk a lot about Michigan State. We have other state people on. I wanted to expand this here. I don't want to be stuck in our own vacuum, so talking to someone that's national like you, I think is very important. I want to take this all the way back to when the offseason started, not just the spring window, the winter portal window, but let's start with the last game of the season. Penn State 256, Michigan State 0. The offseason starts there. How has Michigan State's offseason gone so far in your eyes from the outside looking in?
I think pretty well. I think that anybody who pays national attention to college football, truly national college football, over the past 3-4 years in particular, understands that Jonathan Smith is a serious ball coach, that he has a demonstrated bona fide track record of player development, of above average evaluation, and of being able to field a competitive roster that congeals really well into a decent team in a place where that's not always easy. And unfortunately, it's probably about to get harder at Oregon State because of the same developments that I have no doubt played a role in sending him to East Lansing. But I think he's a serious ball coach, and I think he gives Michigan State a fighting chance and is about as good of an outcome, given what we know now, as you could have hoped for after Mel Tucker immolated in the way that he did at the end of his time there.
That's a nice way of putting it. We've said a lot harsher things about how it ended here in the Mel Tucker era, but that's a good way of painting that picture here for what happened in East Lansing. But let's go to Corvallis, because just like you said, and just like a lot of us state fans know by now, the last few years at Oregon State started from the bottom and then built it up to be a respectful program. What stuck out the most to you about what Jonathan Smith was able to do in Corvallis?
It's funny because Jonathan Smith is an offensive head coach, and that was his background, was being a Chris Peterson offensive coordinator at Washington. But I think the last few years in particular, it was the defense, and it was a really stout defensive program that I think played complementary football with an offense that was always better on the ground than it was through the air. It sort of helped. I think the two units helped each other. I think that when you had a running back like Damian Martinez, it's a pretty good offensive lineman in front of him. The Oregon State defense did not have to play 34, 35-minute games very often, just from a time of possession standpoint. And when they did, they managed to hang on to their key contributors for multiple years at a time and play competitive defensive football against teams that, particularly in the last 2 years in the Pac-12, had quite a bit of offensive firepower. And I think anytime a head coach succeeds in the area of the game that he does not personally major in, I think that's a pretty good sign for how he runs his program from a CEO perspective. And I think that's further borne out by Trent Bray, who I believe was the defensive coordinator at Oregon State, going and being the head coach after Jonathan Smith left.
And I'm glad you brought up time of possession because, look, as bad as it is for State fans to hear, there's a lot of bad things that happened the last few years, and time of possession was amongst the worst of them. Michigan State was bottom of the barrel. So do you think the offense that was going on at Oregon State, even with the new Big Ten, the 4 teams that are added next year and the way college football is revolutionizing, do you still think that's an offense that could be pretty doable here in the Big Ten for success?
I think that it's hard to say only because it's so apples to oranges, the two conferences and the players that he had at Oregon State compared to the type of player he could get at Michigan State. But by the same token, the new Big Ten is going to be harder than even the Pac-12 was before it fell apart. Maybe not so much last year where there were hitters after hitters after hitters on that schedule. But I think it's hard to say. I don't think there's any reason it couldn't work. But as you've seen in the last few years with Mel Tucker, things can look good for a minute. It can be 2021, and Peyton Thorne can look like one of the really ascendant quarterbacks in college football, and then it falls apart. I think what's appealing about Jonathan Smith is that he has the long-term track record of solid, cogent, well-organized offenses that have an identity, that run, I think, one of the more forward-thinking RPO spreads in college football over the last handful of years, and even before that at Washington. And you can look at all of those years and think, okay, this guy's got a shot. And I think a shot is all you can ask for when you're not one of the small handful of bluest of the blue bloods.
I completely agree. No, I was taken aback when you said the word identity because that's something that we have just forgotten over here. I mean, what was Michigan State the last few years? Like Kenneth Walker, and that's it.
I would say that might have been about it, right? It was hard to identify from afar any identity for Michigan State the past few years other than this sucks. And then this is getting really sad as the head coach gets himself fired for cause.
Great times here. But hey, you know what? Better things ahead here. Hopefully they start this fall. I think it could be a few years because, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, this is a rebuild at Michigan State. I know there's some like real diehard fans that say, no, come on, it's not that bad. But this is a rebuild. With that said, though, what do you have to see in year one in East Lansing to kind of believe that, okay, things can go right here?
It's funny. I haven't played the schedule game with Michigan State yet. I haven't.
It's fun. It's fun.
The go tick by tick. But my thought, and I just pull it up as we're talking, is that you'd like to see some fight against the teams that are likely to beat you, and to be something better than the bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten. I don't think that it's really likely that Michigan State is going to be ready for an Ohio State game or an Oregon game or a Michigan game or probably even an Iowa game. But can you put together a solidly plus 500 record against the Marylands of the world, the Boston Colleges, the Illinois, the Purdue's? I mean, Purdue is a program that was a year ago in a similar new coach situation to the one that Michigan State's in right now. Can you jump ahead of those teams that are maybe a little bit further along in their progression under a new staff and look like you're in position to be among the better of the rest in the Big Ten 2025, 2026? I think I would take that. And if you can win 5 or 6 games, I'm just rattling that off the very top of my head, to be a pretty successful looking first season, as long as recruiting reflects that.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue. I mean, which is still something that we're somewhat optimistic about here, but that's for a different conversation. Still more to come with Alex Kirshner of Split Zone Duo. But first, Gametime. Folks, this is the best ticketing app out there. And I know if I've talked up and down about why I love Gametime. For me, it's about saving that money first and foremost. Okay, they're flash deals throughout the week leading up to a game. You'll find great seats, great location, great prices. They're last-minute ticket deals leading up to tip-off or kickoff or first pitch or the first sun of whatever event you're going to. For the procrastinators out there, yes, you could still save money in the wee minutes leading up to the event. But also, I love Gametime. There's no funny business going on there. There's no, oh, hey, wow, this is cool. They're $20 tickets. Awesome. And then you get to check out, and then, well, bam, they smoke you with like $50 fees. No. You get the upfront price very easily with Gametime. I was actually scrolling the Gametime app today on this beautiful Tuesday. The Tigers play the Marlins tonight. I found 15 rows behind the dugout at Comerica Park. $32 per ticket, all in. Again, they're not going to jump you with the fees at the very end. Folks, they are all about saving you money, so let's start saving money right off the bat. When you download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. It's last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I'm with you, though. 6 wins. Jacksonville, Tax Slayer Bowl. I mean, that might as well be Pasadena to me for this year. Can't be like this every year, but man, just getting Michigan State out of a 2-year bowl gameless stretch, like, fine. Bring me to Jacksonville around Christmas time. I don't think that's being a loser entirely.
No.
I don't know.
No, I think it's, as with so many year ones, especially now when the changing of a head coach is going to mean massive roster turnover. I think what you're looking for in your first year in most of these gigs is competence, an indication that you're moving in the right direction. And I think competence is something that Jonathan Smith can deliver, because it's something that he delivered pretty quickly in a tough job at Oregon State.
I think that was one of the first things that we loved about him was just, that C word, competence. Like, just give us someone that has structure, an adult in the room, if you will. The bar is on the floor right now for year one. Again, this can't be the expectation every single year, but you got to start somewhere. And with that said, as Michigan State tries to claw their way to the top of the Big Ten in the next few years under Jonathan Smith, I got to know, in your opinion, where is Michigan State in the Big Ten landscape? You could grade that by what tier they're in. Take it away as far as how you interpret that question, because where is Michigan State in the whole conference?
I think the way that I now think about that is, how well is a school positioned the next time there's consolidation in conference realignment to be brought along with the haves instead of the have-nots. And what's interesting to me about Michigan State is that I think you all sort of straddle that line in terms of resources, prestige, competitiveness in football and men's basketball. Michigan State has been to the highest of highs in one of those sports and pretty close to the highest of highs just in the last decade in the other one. So, I tend to think that Michigan State is going to be included in version 1A of what the next college football is. If there's 40 Power 4 teams that wind up playing 10 years from now, it's something called the Super League. But I don't know that its position is, as entrenched there as not just an Ohio State or Michigan, but a Penn State or Washington. I don't know. And so I think that I think about this a lot because I'm an alumnus of Maryland, which I think is going to be on the other side of the divide when that eventually happens. I think that sort of an unspoken thing that a lot of people in college sports are or should be thinking about in the next 5 to 10 years is, damn, we better be pretty decent here, because ask South Florida and Central Florida, USF and UCF, how seriously timing can play into what your long-term realignment fortunes are in this sport. If the Big 12 is expanding in 2007, USF is in the Big 12 right now and UCF is not. And I think about that a ton, about, the next decade or so of jockeying to be as well positioned as possible for whatever the next thing winds up being, because it does seem to me that there's going to be a next thing. I don't think that Ohio State is going to keep taking the same Big Ten revenue share as Northwestern every year forever.
I can't imagine they're going to be thrilled with that as money becomes more important as the years go on. I hate to jump around like this, but kind of going back to the schedule here, because I think this also sets the table for where Michigan State can be in year one. Who would you say are the 3 teams in the Big Ten that have the most realistic shot of winning the conference title this year? Not national title, but just the conference title this year. 3 teams.
I can only give you 2. I think Ohio State and Oregon are by far the favorites in this conference this year. And then I would, out of respect to Michigan just winning a national championship, I would put them 3rd. But I also think we have to recognize that a national championship one year, with the way that rosters work in this sport now, by no means means a national championship the next year. I'd be a bit surprised if Michigan even made the 12-team playoff this year. Not shocked. And I think that Sherrod Moore's going to do well there. But the two that I feel the best about for 2024 are Ohio State and then Oregon.
So you're saying playing both those teams in back-to-back weeks probably just like not all that fun, and then the third team that you just named 2 weeks after that, like that's not like shaping up to be good.
It could be a not fun middle of the season. In fact, I'm almost sure that it won't be, but you just got to keep the long view as best you can. Remember that there's lots of other things on TV if you're bummed out at halftime of one of those games. And I think the upside is that if you could steal one, which I don't expect, there aren't a lot of big upsets in this sport. That's why they're big upsets. Then you could have a real thing to build around, to point to. And I think that still does matter, even in a collective world where the better bidder is going to win most of these recruiting battles. I think it still helps to be able to show off a Michigan win or an Ohio State win.
Yeah. Or, you know, and this is loser talk, but again, I think like any MSU fan that's watched the team, not just last year, last few years, if you can keep a game within 20 points against Ohio State, like that is marked improvement. I think on average, the first half against Ohio State, I think on average, the score was like 36-3 going into the locker room at halftime. Just execution after execution against the Buckeyes. So I know it's complete loser talk and moral victory radio, but just show something against Ohio State and like, man, we'll be on these airwaves having a parade. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. I mean, look, there's different ways to get blown out. The Washington game for Michigan State last year was not a good way to get blown out. You know,
not fun.
There's 35-7 and you just kind of gradually get the life choked out of you by a better program. And then there's you're being stunted on. And Michigan State does tend to, the last few years, get stunted on a little bit.
I think, oh God, the stat was something crazy. Like Washington only saw third down twice in the first half. It was, Alex, I didn't have fun last year. But hey, this is why we needed some change to happen in East Lansing. And one of the big changes is the quarterback, Aidan Chiles. We've been talking up and down about him all offseason. And hey, this is even so big that it's probably getting on national radars because he was the number one quarterback in the transfer portal per 24/7 Sports. We got a mailbag question a while ago, but I wanted to ask this to someone national, someone with an outside perspective. This comes from low ego, high output MSU fan. I believe there's a very real chance that Aidan Chiles will be the best quarterback in the Big Ten by the end of the season. Am I crazy? Alex, you could either douse all of our flames right now, or you could see maybe a potential roadmap because Aidan Chiles is good. Maybe the rest of the Big Ten quarterback play isn't stellar. Take it away here. I'll stop blabbing.
I think I would take the field over Aidan Chiles to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, but
fair.
It is an open landscape. Look, I think if I were picking leaders in that race right now, I think Dylan Gabriel at Oregon.
Sure.
I'm pretty up on Will Howard at Ohio State. I actually think that's going to go pretty well. I know that there's some reasonable question about that for both Ohio State fans and not, but I don't think Ryan Day is going to whiff twice in a row at that position. So I think that there are a few guys I'd position ahead of him. But I was encouraged, as was everybody else, by how he looked in the couple of games that he played at the end of last year. I forget if it was one or two, but I know when DJ Uiagalelei was leaving, he took over at the end of the year and showed some really good stuff. And I know that the recruiting industry is really high on him. I am going to reserve some judgment, but I think there's more reason to be optimistic about him as a college quarterback over the next couple of years than there is most of the guys who are going to take the ball week one for Big Ten programs.
It is a down year for the Big Ten as far as quarterback goes. The teams will still be pretty good, obviously, but I'm seeing Drew Aller, who I had a lot of stock in last year, and my God, that crashed like FTX. Yeah. That was not good. I mean, Michigan has a quarterback that hasn't even thrown a ball in real game action last year. It's going to be fascinating. The new Big Ten teams, like, what's the quarterback for USC? Miller Moss? Like that? Obviously, those are pretty talented guys out there too, but I think he's closer to the top than I think even a lot of us state fans even realize in the conference. Now, can the rest of the team help him? That's your $1 million tax layer bowl question, but we'll have to wait and see. Before we get you out of here, what kind of a talking head show would this be without asking you for a record projection for a season that doesn't even start until, 4 months if I'm doing my math right? But Where do you see Michigan State at right here?
All right, now I'll play the schedule game, and this
Showtime.
This is always
Let's
fun
go.
to do in May.
Yeah.
All right, FAU and East Lansing, that'll be a win. At Maryland, that will be a loss. Prairie View will be a win. At Boston College will be a win, so you'll be 3-1 going into Ohio State and Oregon, so you'll be 3-3. 3-4 after Iowa, 3-5 after Michigan. Then you got to keep the faith. I think you'll beat Indiana at home. You'll be where did that leave us?
That's 4-5 now.
That's 4
that's
and
4 and
5
5.
there.
Yep.
You know what? I think 6-6. I think you can. I think that Michigan State can get 2 of the last 3 between Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers. So I am going to go 6-6. It's maybe a soft 6-6, closer to 5-7 than 7-5, but I'm going to go 6-6 for Michigan State and Jonathan Smith's first year. And as we know, playing the May schedule game where you just win, loss, win, loss, win is a foolproof and ironclad way of picking. So I would put my life on it and that of my family.
Yep. The over-under is 5.5 right now. So that was actually financial advice from Alex over there. Bet all of the money you have in your possession on the over, folks.
Not actionable. Alex, yes.
Yeah, who cares about all the legalities behind everything we say? But Alex, it sounds like I'll see you in the pool section at Jacksonville Stadium in a few months here. Can't wait. Tax Slayer Bowl, baby. It's going to be a great time. Woo! Folks, thanks Alex Kirshner. Does fantastic work over at Split Zone Duo. And we will be back tomorrow because it's Locked On Spartans. We do this thing 5 days a week. Love you all. Go Green.